to college to try to get higher in the organization, such as AA. He was the 55th overall recruit in the whole nation in the class of 2024. He had a perfect game score, perfect 10. ASU had the number 18 recruiting class with 15 commits. The depth and potential of this team is definitely something to look out for.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they open up this season against Ohio State, especially with their junior pitcher, Blaine Winks. He was named the preseason All-American by Perfect Game. So I think it's going to be really cool to see how ASU kind of comes out. I feel like it's going to be a well-rounded game. I feel like they kind of both are on the same level, and it's just a 3-game streak, so I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, baseball is obviously huge anywhere in America, but here it's not really looked upon as one of the top sports. ASU's been okay over the past few years. They haven't really been anything too stellar in the Pac-12, but the other sports have shown that the transition over to a new conference improves their game. Football has had a history-making year, which we'll talk a little bit about later. The hockey team has been doing pretty solid. The basketball team is surprising a lot of people, so it might be big for them to get into the Big 12.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting storyline with how young the team is. We saw it with the football team, projected 3 wins, made the playoff, like you said. Basketball team, I think 10-5 right now with a 17-year-old as their star player. Coach Bloomquist was hired in 2021. He's had 14 players drafted in the MLB. And this is kind of his make it or break it year. Arizona State's kind of been middle of the ground in every conference that they've been in. But I really think this is the year. You got the guys, you got the returners, you got the returning starters, star players, freshman class. You got really everything going your way. And you just got to perform when it comes to the regular season, which does start February 14th.
Yeah, and with that being said, the expectations, I feel like everyone's kind of just excited to see what happens because no one really expected all of these sports to just do so well. And all the teams across the board have done a really great job recruiting, as you were explaining earlier. So it's just really cool to see, especially coming into a completely new conference, new competition. It's going to be a great year.
Yes, we'll transition into one of those teams that is also in the Big 12, like most of the university. It's women's basketball, who has a big game coming up against Kansas State later on in this week.
Yeah, so ASU women's basketball, they are currently 8-10. They're a fierce team. Watching them play, they're really fun to watch, especially Ty Skinner. She's a graduate guard. She transferred from Delaware in 2022, but she missed last year due to her injury. But she came back on fire. She leads the team right now with 302 points, 97 field goals made. She leads with 53 assists and 43 three-pointers. Last night when they took a defeat against Kansas, she scored 18 points and had a game-high 4 three-pointers. And she's just so aggressive on defense. It's incredible. And the way she leads her team, she's just such a powerful player. And Kansas State's going to be a tough matchup. They're ranked number 11 right now, and they did defeat U of A last night 62-47. But, this ASU team, they have a great connection, great bond, and last night they actually fell really short in the first quarter, and then they bounced back and they held up their own. And yeah, so I believe that they're going to be able to put up a fight against Kansas State on Sunday.
Yeah, the basketball team for the women's side has not performed as well as the men's team has. They've been a little bit of a letdown going 8-10, 2-4 in the conference, but they have the tools to turn it around. Adair is a very good coach. She can work through these things and try and figure out who meshes well with everyone else, but they just need to put it all together and have a couple of good performances one after another to kind of live up to the expectation that they have as being a big team in the Big 12. And the men's team has done it. It's women's turn to step up.
Yeah, it's also great for the game of women's basketball how much hype is going around all of these, ranked teams getting these nationally televised games. Arizona State has had a few. We saw it last year, kind of the spike of college women's basketball. Of course, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all those girls, Haley Van Lith. The list goes on and on and on. And yeah, the Big 12 is a really pristine conference when it comes to women's basketball. You look at the conference standings, and it's Kansas State, TCU, Baylor, all ranked in the top 15. And then you got 3 more teams ranked top 50. And it's been a tough ride for the women's team, but I really think this is the point that they turn it around. They have Kansas State, West Virginia, 2 ranked teams in a row, and you're sitting at around 500 range. But if you can get those 2 wins and go 500, I think the confidence just skyrockets for this team.
Yeah, and if you look back at their other games, they have a few games that they had a tough time, but they have they put up a great fight, and they don't lose by much. They also stay really calm in chaotic situations. How you mentioned Adair, she's a great coach, and she just does a really great job of getting them all collected, getting their mindset on like, hey, we want this win. We know we can get this win. And even if they fall short, it's only by a little bit, and they show that they can fight. So I think, like you said, this is a great opportunity, great time in the season to turn it around and put up a great fight against the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, some of the fans aren't very happy with some of their shooters taking shots that they shouldn't. They take a lot of interesting shot opportunities. I mean, they put it up. I think it's Basham. She just shoots it from like 18 feet. Like, you should not be shooting it from there. Like, she needs to be closer. She needs to put it like.
She's aggressive too.
Yeah, like she's an aggressive player. Like, she needs to be getting in there, not backing up and going to the 3-point line. Like, you need to be able to really be able to work with your skills is what I'm trying to say here. Is she needs to do the stuff that she can do well, not try and be the flashy player.
Going back to my point earlier about, in basketball, you're never really down and out. In the regular season, you might not perform to the level that you want. But once it gets to the Big 12 tournament, it's win or go home. If you win out, you make the tournament. I think if Arizona State gets like second or third, they'll make the tournament as well. But you just got to gain some kind of momentum in Big 12 play. Try to knock off some of these top-ranked teams and, just try to make it throughout the season.
Yeah, so we'll take a little bit of a break here before we continue the second half of the show. We got This Is How We Roll by the Florida-Georgia line. We are rolling back in to Onward to Victory. Back for the second half of the show. I'm Colgan Herschel. Alongside me is Taylor Gottney and Rhiannon Basil. We're going to jump into it with a little bit of a different segment. We normally have a prospect talking about someone who's up and coming, who Arizona State is looking at recruiting. But today, we're going to talk about the incoming transfer portal. All the players that Arizona State football has signed in the transfer portal, because, boy, is there a lot of them.
Yeah, like Colgan said, a little bit of a different. I'm going to highlight a few players and then really go into 2 of the big transfers that Arizona State just got. After winning the Big 12, you have a lot of people graduating, including Kamari Wilson, Troy O'Meary, and plenty of role players entered the portal. They might not leave. They might come back. We'll see. But this transfer cycle really happened on December 15th when Kenny Dillingham was already getting busy with a 3-star kicker, Jesus Gomez, coming from Eastern Michigan, and 3-star receiver Noble Johnson announcing their commitment. And as y'all know, the kicking game definitely struggled, so Gomez will be a huge – I'm pretty sure he will start day one. He's probably already getting to work down in Tempe, Arizona. And then as late December and early January came around, Arizona State grabbed even more solid 3-star transfers, such as wide receiver Jalen Moss from Fresno State, tight end Kamari Anderson from Kentucky, safety Adrian Wilson from Washington State, running back Kane Udo from Army to try to replace Cam Skataboo, and interior O-lineman Himido Obigdo from Texas State.
It's going to be really cool to see like how Arizona State can pull the momentum they had this year into next year with having such big players and big presences on their team leave. But with this recruiting class, I'm pretty confident, honestly. I think it's going to be really, really cool to see. I feel like they have that fire. Like, hey, we were so close. Let's see how we can get it in this year. And it's going to be really exciting to see how because I feel like ASU has a relatively young team. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how they can lead these new players and help these players adjust to the environment of being down in Tempe.
Yeah, a lot of these players are definitely looking to fill the gap that Cam Skataboo is leaving as he's graduating this coming summer. But it's going to be a tough task. I mean, I have said multiple times that I think this is an 8-4 team. I just think that the success that Arizona State had last year, you can look at their schedule and say, well, hey, they don't really play that many good Big 12 teams, and very true. And the Big 12 is just not a top conference in any regard at all. But I think that they strung together so many games last year that were just like, we were down early, and then they came back, and it was mostly Cam Scatabo who just kind of carried this team through a lot of games. You look at the Utah game, that was all Scatabo. You look at the game he wasn't in, and it was tough for them to get stuff going. Like, it just, when he's not on the team, the team looks a lot worse. So, I mean, I know that, that Dillingham is, like, looking at the wide receivers to go after some of them and allow Levitt to throw it more and not rely on the run game.
Yeah, and I just saw something earlier. It's Kenny Dillingham has kind of changed the offensive scheme going into this season as well, a more pro style, which spreads out the ball a little bit more. It makes Levitt become a developed quarterback and make those quick decisions that he didn't really have to make. You know, we would send Tyson, we would send Guillory on a deep shot, have Scatterby as a check down, and half the time it would be the check down. But another receiver, like Colgan said, is Jaron Hamilton from Alabama. I remember a lot of us were really excited about him. He's known for a great release, and he's not really that tall, but he has such perfect timing, and he wins almost every single one-on-one in high school. He didn't find the opportunity at Bama, of course, last year, but he will find a team for sure that desperately needs to find some receivers, with Levitt starting to mature as a junior quarterback now.
Yeah, and going off of that, I was going to say, I think this is going to be a really great year for Levitt. I mean, he obviously did great this past season, but being able to see how they can, really utilize him on passing yards, and with all those new wide receivers, it's going to be really cool to see how they implement that. And, Hamilton, like you said, he's not that tall. He didn't get that much of an opportunity in Alabama, but like you said, he's quick, he's strategic, and I just know that he's going to be a great addition to this team.
Sam Levitt is going to need to be the best player on Arizona State next year if they want any chance of replicating their 12. How many wins did they get this year?
11.
11. It was 11-3, I believe. Sam Levitt's just he's going to need to perform like the best quarterback in the country. Like, he's going to need, in my opinion, he's going to need to have a Heisman year to be able to even bring this team closer to what they wanted to do this year. I mean, we haven't had a show since then, but the targeting call was, should have been targeting. I
was there, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, it changed the game so much, but it's a topic for a different day. But he's going to need to be the best player on the team. He's going to need to carry this team through a lot of wins, and I mean, he's gonna have the tools to do it, and Dillingham's giving him that. He's gonna need to perform with it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting the way the portal worked for Kenny Dillingham. You see a lot of these guys, such as Carson Beck, just to name one, finding that school that will pay him the most money. And when you're going,
well, I think Carson Beck just wanted to be with his girlfriend in Miami.
But when you're kind of like a 3-star, 4-star transfer, or like a less sought after transfer. Dillingham used this thing called team first mentality to recruit transfers. He said, look, guys, it's Bruce Pearl from Auburn does the same thing. He goes for these role players, and he's like, you're not going to play every single snap. You're not going to play every single down. We're not going to have that many plays designed for you, but you're going to have a job, and you're going to do it, and we're going to win as a team. And I think a lot of guys are starting to switch to that when they are, not getting the offers from the huge schools. They're seeing a school like Arizona State that's developing and with a young coach, young team, and they're getting excited about what they can do as a collective group.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, you can just tell watching the games, like, Dillingham is so passionate about this team. He's so passionate about the players. He genuinely wants them to do well, and I feel like you can see if a player makes a mistake, if they mess up. Like, he tells them, like, hey, this is what you did, but it's constructive, and he builds up the team so well, and I think that's what a lot of athletes are looking for. They're not just looking for someone who's just looking for wins. They're looking for someone that genuinely wants to build up a team that works well together, and that's what I see in Dillingham.
Yeah, he did a really good job of recruiting, and we're going to switch over to another team that did well with recruiting last year, the hockey team, and talk about Cruz Lucius, who isn't
Lucius.
He's technically not a new transfer per se. We didn't get him out of a transfer portal or anything, but he hasn't played all season. He was out with an injury for the first half of the year. And he made his season debut against North Dakota, and him on a line with Cullen Potter and Bennett Shimmick was probably the most dominant line that we have seen all year since when it was Kyle Smolin with Alexander and I think it was also Shimmick on his line. Those three were an elite, and you look at the connections that Cruz Lucius has with Bennett Shimmick. They played at Gentry Academy when they were teenagers, and Shimmick was a very big reason as to why Lucius came over here from Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's really cool that they have that history. I feel like there's a lot of connections throughout this team. Like, they have a lot of background playing together. And, the way that ASU's been playing so far without him, it's going to be so cool to see, like, with him in there, with his great passes and just his energy. Like, you could tell he just loves the environment. He loves the fans. And, Mullet Arena will pop out. And I think it's going to be really awesome to see how he, like, just adds to the fire that this team has.
I mean, like, for me, I don't know that much about hockey, but growing up in the South, you don't see college hockey teams competing very much. But it's been so awesome to come out here and see all these people just so into hockey and how big of a sport it actually is. Like meeting Colgan, Richard, just to name a few guys, like just talking about hockey all the time. It's really cool to see the college that I go to really respecting all sports and hockey being such a huge deal.
And I feel like especially this year, a lot of people have been showing their love kind of all around the sports, not just staying to the same few. I feel like especially, the sport's been doing really well. And even when they fall short, I think the fan base does a good job of, like, showing out.
Yeah, Lucius had a great quote about, like, the difference between his time in Wisconsin and his time so far here. And he just said, like, there were some times when he was playing in Wisconsin that, I think it's the Kohl Center, it's such a big arena that even though that Wisconsin is a very big hockey school, they can't fill the stadium, so it just kind of feels empty. Even though there's a lot more people than at Arizona State games, it has the vibe of an empty stadium.
Which is funny, because you typically wouldn't think that Arizona would have a big hockey fan base.
But at Arizona State, Mullet Arena seats 5,000 people maximum. And so anytime that there is a home game, it feels like a home game. That student section gets loud every single game. And Lucius touched on that. You're just like, it's a great atmosphere.
And he has many more to experience.
Yes, he does. And to finish up this episode, we're going to talk about a guy who has no more time at Arizona State. We're not going to give an alumni shout-out. I mean, technically he's an alumni. We're going to give a little bit of a Scatabo send-off.
Okay, this is just, it's a little sad because I feel like he's just so big. And, like, it was funny because after the game, literally all the radios here for, like, at least 2 weeks, all they talked about was Scataboo. So we have to, send this off with such a good shout out for him. But he just demolished this season. He did so good from the beginning of his career at Sacramento State, and then coming in, he just led this team so well in every way that he possibly could. He has some passing yards, mini quarterback. And he was a Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week 5 times. He was a first-team All-American. He had 5th in Heisman voting. He was a Peach Bowl Offensive MVP. And hasn't that not happened in, like,
it was
a
the first
long time?
First time a losing player has ever won.
Yeah, I think it was losing
Only
running back. Oh, unbelievable.
Something funny that happened while we were at the game, my dad called me, and my dad does not watch sports. Like, he just not care. He was watching the game, and he said, dude, Cam Scataboo is just a beast, like throwing up on the sideline, literally he would get tackled. They wouldn't show it on TV, but he would get tackled, and he would just laid there for like 5 seconds and just get helped up, like, with so much willpower. And he delivered that throw, delivered the game-tying touchdown. He delivered the touchdown in overtime. It's just insane what that man did to Arizona State and put us on the map for really every sport.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it the Arizona State Scataboos. I mean, he's been so amazing for the school. And I mean, you look at a guy like Pat Tillman, and he did the exact same thing. He put Arizona State on the map for a little while, and now Scatabo's kind of following in his footsteps, doing the same thing. So
I'm curious to see where he goes after this.
Yes,
Denver.
Where will be drafted?
Let's go, Broncos.
No.
I mean, I would like him to come to the Bears. I don't think that they will take him, but
I mean, I like Aaron Jones on the Vikings, but I would still love Scatteroo.
Everybody wants Skat. Everybody does.
And you know what? It's also really interesting because you could see throughout the season his like fire, and he just genuinely, he's like, no, we're gonna win this game. But specifically against Texas, their defense was so good, but he did not give up. Like, the way they came back, the way that Scatteroo pushed through so hard.
Yeah, best defense in the nation.
Exactly,
actually.
and he took so many hits. I feel like that was the most that he's taken all year, and he just showed out. Like, he never fails, and it was a great game.
Yeah, it was a great way to send him off into the sunlight for his last game as a Sun Devil, but
maybe we'll have a shout out later on, seeing what he does.
See when he's getting drafted, where
Yeah.
he goes, but for now, that'll do it for this episode of Onward to Victory. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Colgan Herschel.
I'm Rhiannon Basil.
And I'm Taylor Gottney.
Thank you for listening.